and gentlemen, would you please rise for the singing of the national anthem by Mr. Kyle Conley, a senior at Fairfield High School.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does the star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Wow. I don't know about you, but I'm fired up. Thank you, Kyle. That was magnificent. Welcome to the tribute to Joe Nuxall, presented by the Joe Nuxall Character Education Fund and the Fairfield Community Foundation. My name is Kurt Weingand, and I'm a member of the Board of Directors of the Joe Nuxall Character Education Fund, and I'll be your host, and most importantly, I'll be your auctioneer for this evening, for what we think will be an absolutely remarkable evening for you and your friends. We are here this evening to garner support for the Joe Nuxall Hope Project. But before we get started, I would like to recognize a few special guests that have helped make this event possible. First and foremost, this outstanding facility was donated by Jim and Bonnie Bonaminio. Jim, Jungle Jim, where are you? Jim, thank you, down back there in the corner. This place is a jewel in Fairfield. If you haven't been here, the wine selection here is one of the best in the state, probably the country. And he's got award-winning bathrooms in the store. They are national champion bathrooms. Isn't that right, Jim? If you haven't been there, you got to go. You're going to get your photo taken down there. It's magnificent. The other thing to be wary of, on the sign out in front, Marty, tomatoes were 79 cents a pound today. You can't leave without tomatoes tonight. I'd also like to thank two leaders from our partner organization, the Fairfield Community Foundation. Both of them here this evening, the president, Miss Sally Brown, and director, Miss Betsy Hope. Would you please stand? The director of the Hope Project is also here, Miss Cindy Brown, who's been so incredibly helpful. Cindy, raise your hand, say hi. I'd also like to thank, of course, the Cincinnati Reds for all that they've done for this particular event and our organization. In particular, I want to thank our largest sponsor, our humility sponsor, who is Cox Ohio Publishing, who donated over $25,000 for this event. Thank you very much. Cox Ohio Publishing has a table right in the back in the foyer, and they have this nice tab insert that is a tribute to photos to the old left-hander. Please make sure you get one of these before you leave. They're up there on the table in the back. We also have a number of special guests. With us here this evening is Reds Hall of Fame outfielder George Foster. Mr. Foster. Almost of the same caliber, we have Fairfield Mayor Ron DePifanio. Ron, are you here? There he is. A very important person for our work in character education, the State Director of Character Education, Miss Lucy Frontera. Lucy? Where are you? There she is in the back there. Also, previous kicker with the Cincinnati Bengals, Mr. and Mrs. Jim Breach. Jim. Jim and his family are tremendous people of character. Also with us this evening, this is really a great honor to have him here. Former Marine serving in Iraq for 14 months, now a third-grade teacher at the Fairfield City Schools, Corpsman Jason Jackson. And last but not least, and probably most important, we have the members of the Nuxall family here, right up here at the head table. Joe's brother Bob and his wife Pat. Oh, they're over here? There they are. Brother Don and wife Myra. Joe's Aunt Dorothy Kurtz. Joe's son Phil. Kim's wife Bonnie. And her daughter Julie McDonald, with great-grandchildren Brooke and Trey. Our opening comments will be delivered by a person that really needs no introduction following this morning's feature story in the Cincinnati Enquirer, if you didn't see it. I'll simply add to it by reading a letter to the editor of the Journal News published in 2001. Congratulations to Mr. Kim Nuxall and the Fairfield City School District for recognizing Mr. Nuxall as Fairfield's Teacher of the Year. Mr. Nuxall's innovative and effective approach of teaching values to his students will not only benefit the children and families that are lucky to be a part of the Central Elementary School, but it will also have a meaningful, positive effect on the citizens and the community at large. These children, who now have a much better understanding of the meaning of respect, responsibility, and honesty, are peers of some children that may not have been fortunate enough to be exposed to the importance of these basic human values. All of these children will grow up soon to provide essential work services and become future leaders in the community. These elementary school children and their peers will soon become young adults that will be exchanging money with you and me at the cash registers in local businesses and prioritizing important community service appropriations for us as senior citizens. In essence, they are our future. It ends by, so if a kid stops you in the parking lot sometime to hand you a $20 bill that you dropped as you walked out of the store, you should most likely thank Kim Nuxall. I feel very lucky to live in a community with a school system that has outstanding teachers and the wisdom to recognize outstanding, innovative approaches to education. I highly value this kind of leadership. hats off to Mr. King Nuxall for being recognized as one of the best. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the founder, the heart, and the soul of the Joe Nuxall Character Education Fund, Kim Nuxall.
Thank you, Kurt. Still recovering from Monday, opening day. And quite frankly, we're still recovering from November 15th. Something like this happens, you spend a lot of time reflecting on certainly your father's life, but your own life as well. It really took a lot of time and thought, what was this about? What was it about that 6,000 people came to a visitation? What was it about that people like Sean Casey drove 6 hours to pay his respects? Barry Larkin, Ken Griffey Jr. flying from Florida, entire Reds staff coming up. A gentleman who just listened to Dad on the radio drives over from Pittsburgh himself, never met him in his life. What was that about? What was it about that there's a statue down there at the Great American? Retirement of the microphone. And again, this past week, the opening day ceremony, what was that all about? Why did that happen? And some people look at it from the broad sense that it was a celebrity thing and the baseball thing, but wasn't about that. I think it was all about relationships. And I think of Dad, it was a simple little formula he had for success. And that was just treat people nice. What a simple concept that served him so well. And I thought about a little phrase that really summed up Dad. And it's, Dad always looked up to everyone, and he never looked down to anyone. And I could stand here with hundreds and thousands of examples of that. Kind of one that stands out, I look over at Bob Ernst. We took a wonderful trip to the British Isles, and I remember our trip to Germany a couple of years ago we got to take, and I got to thinking, who did Dad become buddies with over there? The bus drivers, That was so Dad, because Dad could put himself in those shoes, He would have liked to have driven a bus all over Germany and taken people around on a tour. So I think about the hundreds of years of relationships in this room. Over 30 years with Marty, and 64 years with the Reds, 60-some years with the Journal, all the wonderful stories, and the Inquirer. And I don't know if Bernie made it tonight, but boy, the years with Bernie in the clubhouse, and his brothers, 70 years and more relationship with his brothers, and all the way down to I'm sure he would say his most cherished relationship with his 6- and 7-year-old great-grandchildren, Brooke and Trey, that brought him such joy. For me, I'm just looking for ways to express my gratitude. It's at a level I cannot express to you for coming here, for caring. I know these are very busy people in this room. You have a lot of things going on. For you to take time to come here and share this with us is overwhelming to me. was quoted as, carrying the torch of Dad's legacy, but that is not a one-man job. And I want to thank you all for coming here to help me carry the torch. And enjoy the evening. I think it's going to be a special one. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. And now, let's get on with the show. We've got a lot to do here this evening. Our masters of ceremonies for tonight's program are familiar to all Reds fans. They are currently working together in their 16th season as a broadcast team for the Cincinnati Reds TV. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. George Grand and Mr. Chris Welch.
What do you say, George? You're fooling them again for one more year?
All I got to do is hook myself to you and we're all right.
My question to you, though, as I look at the program, is that can you go 9 innings?
I'm not Phil Rizzuto, you know. I don't leave after 3.
I know I looked through the whole crowd. I looked pretty hard through the crowd. We've only got one relief pitcher here. So we're saving him. And he was an all-star. We're going to bring him up here later on. We better save him for extra innings.
Humie can bail us out anytime.
Anytime we need.
You know, we're excited to be here, and we're excited for this season for a lot of reasons. Some of you may know that we're doing more games on FSN than we've ever done before, and we're going to be in high definition. That's so all of you can see his mustache better. You know, Kim, you asked the question, why? And I think the answer is right here. You know, the Bible says that friends are the medicine of life, and this is a hope project, and what Knucksy did was bring hope to a whole lot of people. People in this room, people all over Reds country, people all over this great country, and you're right, you know, he probably talked to the bus drivers because they had cigarettes. That was the only way he was going to be able to get them. That it, Marty? Right? Yeah. He stick them right underneath in the booth right there.
And for all we know, that bus driver may have had a cooler on the side of the seat as well. With a good old vitamin A-B. George, why don't you take it away?
You know, Chris, we talk about hope. We talk about the concept of why we're all here and the belief that what Joe Nuxhall gave us is something that is irreplaceable. It's hope for our lives, hope for the game of baseball, hope for the Reds. And the first person we'll bring up tonight is a man that has brought hope back to Cincinnati. You know, we're honoring the memory and the legacy of Sparky on this night too. And Sparky brought something to Cincinnati that was unique because he was just like Knucksy. He was a people person. He was a man who believed in people. I remember I asked him once what he said, and JB knows this better than anybody. I said, what did you say to the first group of players that you ever managed? And he said the four most important words: I believe in you. And Sparky did that. Knucksy did that. And Bob Castellini has done that to the Reds organization. He's done that to the city of Cincinnati. To win on the field is one story. To win as an organization, to win as a city, to win as a community is far more importantly. Please welcome the owner of the Cincinnati Reds, a man who has brought hope back to Cincinnati. In baseball words, Bob Castellini.
Thank you, George. If Chris grows more of a mustache, I guess we'll have to give him a raise.
Did you get that on tape?
Joe Nuxhall is part of the Reds' DNA. It is hard to separate the Reds' story from Joe's story over his 63 years with the club. We love Joe. Joe knew we loved him, and Joe loved us back. It has been outstanding to witness the outpouring of that love and the many tributes paid to Joe since his passing. Fans were immediately drawn to Joe's statue at Great American Ballpark when they heard the news. It became the first stop of a vigil that continued on to Joe's funeral, which gained momentum at Reds Fest, marched along every stop of the Reds' winter caravan, continued into spring training, and circled back to Great American Ballpark on opening day just 3 days ago. That vigil shows no signs of weakening. There was a reverence about opening day. 43,000 fans came to not only see a ball game, but to be part of honoring Joe on this most sacred of Reds occasions. Honor him we did, and we will continue to do so. This ongoing Knucksy Love Fest reminds us that at its core, baseball is about the people. Most fans become hooked when a player or team becomes their favorite. And in following their favorites, their personal history becomes intertwined with that of their favorites. Our stories recalling Joe usually start with, "I'll never forget when Joe did this, or said that, or came up and talked to me." He is permanently part of thousands of people's personal histories. And as CEO of the Reds, I can tell you, I'm grateful he is permanently part of Reds history. Let's keep telling the stories, remembering the moments, because in doing so, we are writing the lyrics to Joe's life, a life well lived and worth celebrating. Thank you very much.
You know, they say that you can never go home, but our next speaker will show you that you can indeed come home, and you can come home in a big way. The young man that knew Joe Nuxhall growing up, running around the hallways of Great American, well, it wasn't Great American Ballpark, it was Riverfront Stadium. And he left as a peon, but he's come back here as a well-known national announcer. And I am happy to work with him many games this year. Let's get him up here right now. Let's welcome Mr. Tom Brenneman.
Thank you very much, Chris. I think those words you used to describe me when I left still hold true now. I don't think there's any debate about that. But, you know, when we moved to Cincinnati, and I was 10 years old, my sister was 9 years old, I didn't grow up knowing who Joe Nuxhall was. I had no idea who he was. I didn't know he was a pitcher for the Cincinnati Reds. I didn't know that he was born and raised in this area. All the things he accomplished in the broadcast booth, had absolutely no idea. All I knew is the first time I met him when I walked into Tampa, Florida, where the Reds had spring training at the time, is there was this mountain of a man who the first time you meet him and you're 10 and you're about this tall, naturally like guys, all people that big, you're terrified of him. And you think when you hear him talk, there's this gruff, tough, I better stay the heck out of his way kind of a guy. And you found out in such a short amount of time that nothing could have been further from the truth. Fast forward about 14 years later, and the next thing you know, you're sitting next to the same guy broadcasting a baseball game, filling in for your dad in Plant City, Florida. You're scared to death, and you're sitting next to this guy again who you know is not so gruff and tough. Well, he was gruff and tough, but you knew no matter what, he was going to do the best he could to help you get through that game, and that he did. And for this day and to this day, forevermore, that single day of my life doing that game on radio, and the way he basically just held my hand and got me through that game, I'm forever indebted to Joe Nuxhall for that day. Got to know him as the years go by, moved away for almost 20 years, and had the chance to come back and sit with him last year on opening day. He did not look good. For those of you that were around him every day, you know he didn't look good. And to watch the way he came to the ballpark, though, and how he got so excited, and the spirit that he embodied each and every day. He might get there a little bit late. He might leave a little bit early. It might take him a little bit longer to get to his van. You didn't know how many more nights there were going to be for him to do that. But you hoped and prayed that the next day he would be back there again. You know, you brought up earlier the words, Doctor, a few minutes ago about the article written back in 2001, and you hear words like respect and responsibility and humility and values. All of those things were Joe Nuxhall. Those are words, so many places it seems like in this day and age, it doesn't matter where you go, those are like punchlines at a party, or people just using those words just to say they use those words somewhere. Joe Nuxhall carried those words, and so many like them, the way he carried himself each and every day of his life. And the only thing that I could ever say about Joe Nuxhall, it's pretty simple, and it's the greatest compliment I think one person could ever give to another person, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart. If my daughter, who's 4.5 years old, and my son, who just turned 3 a week ago, if they could grow up to be just like Joe Nuxhall, I'd be the happiest dad in the entire world. For the Nuxhall family, I'm sure these are very tough days. I lost a dad, Kim, Paul. It's tough. And for losing a brother, and for losing a great-grandfather, a grandfather, I'm sure these are tough days. Don Zetta, I'm sure these are very, very, very difficult days. I promise you, they're going to get better, and I know that heaven's a better place with Joe Nuxhall in it. God bless all of you and the family. Get through tough times. You know, if there's anything you need from everybody in this room, they'll be here for you. Thanks for having me tonight. At this time, I'd like to introduce a man who probably knew Joe, obviously professionally and personally, as well as anybody, his partner, a total of 34 years, every day for 31 years, my father, Marty Brenneman.
Thank you, Tom. You know, I don't know what I can tell you folks that you haven't already heard over the years. Tom said 34 years. We were together for 31 full-time. I don't know that there was a broadcast team in the history of baseball that two guys worked together that long. And in that time, I don't think we were angry at each other over 3 times in 31 years. I've gotten mad at both of my wives that many times in one day. That's why I've been married twice. We just got along. I mean, from day one, and I used to say, you know, I think the reason why we do is because we're both left-handed and we're both a little bit different. You know, Greg Hord wrote in his book, which was a great book, we're like an old married couple. And we were. I mean, it's really amazing. We really got closer when I discovered golf 15 years ago. And then we'd go out and we'd play every day and on the road, and we'd go to bed early after a game. We'd get up at 6 o'clock, and we'd take a shower and jump in a car and go play somewhere. And we'd get back to the hotel at 12:30, and Joe'd take a 2-hour power nap, is what he called it. Damn power nap's 30 minutes. And then we'd go to the ballpark, and we'd do it all over again the next day. Some of you have heard the story, but just bear with me because I'm sure a lot of you haven't. And since he's passed away, I've told the story a million times. I'm not a religious person. Sometimes I'm sorry I say that, but I'm not. But I think that certain things happen that make you take a step back and think about the way things happen. You know, when Joe died, I was in the middle of the Pacific with Herb Reisenfeld and his folks on our annual cruise. It was something that Joe used to look forward to every year. We had a great time. And I got a call. It was really amazing because I went to bed the night before about 10:30. And I had a cell phone, and for some reason, with Cincinnati Bell, I asked my buddy John Burns, I said, I want to have phone access no matter where we are. And we went to the Mexican Riviera, and he said, I'll take care of it. And so I said, now I want to be able to get off the ship and make a phone call or take a phone call wherever we are. He said, we'll take care of it. And they did. And so now I go to bed that night, and my phone is right by my head on the nightstand. And for some reason, I woke up about 1:30 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and my message light was on. And I punched the phone, and I checked my text message, and I got a message from Rob Butcher, who is the Reds Media Relations Director, and all the message said was 911. Unbelievably, I didn't relate it to anything. Maybe I was half asleep, whatever it was. 6 o'clock in the morning, I got a call from John Burns, and we were talking, and he made a comment about Joe, and I didn't react the way he thought I should have, and he said, "Oh my God, you don't know, do you?" And I said, and then I had a bad premonition. I said, "What?" He said, "He passed away last night." And I was on the phone all day long, and then it dawned on me, and by the way, the first call I got the next day was from Ken Griffey Jr. And I think that credit should be given where credit is due. What the Reds did on opening day, Ken Griffey Jr. had the idea. It was a different concept from what the Reds did in terms of coming out with the jerseys with 41 and Nux Hall on the back, but Jr. had the idea, and I passed the idea on to the ball club when I came back. And so then I start thinking, and the day before, the week before Joe passed away, he and I got together at Kenwood Country Club to fulfill an obligation based on a fundraiser, and some of you may know Bobby Schmidt. It was he and his brother to play golf with Joe and I at Kenwood Country Club. And the day was beautiful. I mean, it was such a perfect day. In November, it was 57 degrees. There wasn't a cloud in the sky, and we meet out at Kenwood Country Club at 10:30 in the morning, and we pull into the parking lot, which is on the other side from where the pro shop is. And he gets out of his van, and he said, "Would you mind going to get the golf cart?" Because he was really too weak to walk over there. I said, "Sure." So I went and got the golf cart, came over, we bagged up the cart, we go to the first tee. There's 4 of us. And so he was not strong enough to play 18 holes. He maybe swung the club 5 times that day. But he told stories in his own inimitable fashion. He was one of the great storytellers of all time. I've always been jealous of his being able to recount something that happened in 1953. Hell, I was 11 years old then. Please. But he was amazing. And so now he's telling these stories, and I mean, these guys are loving it. And 2 or 3 times I said to him, I said, "Joe, why don't you let me take you back to your van and going back home and rest?" He said, "No." He said, "That's all the heck I do." He said, "I'm so tired of sitting around doing nothing. I just want to be out here and enjoy the day." And we get to the 15th hole. And we're sitting in the cart, and he says to me, and he never did this. He never did this. Nor did I ever do it with him. We never got melancholy. We never got sentimental. That's not the way our relationship was. But we're talking, and he said to me, "We really had a good time, didn't we?" And I said, "Yes, we did." And I'm really convinced that he knew that was the last time we were going to see each other. And as it turned out, it was. And he never said anything like that. I mean, we had a hell of a time. I mean, we did things, and we can't even talk about some of the things we did. But we had a great time. And like the last year that we worked together full time, we knew it was coming. We knew that the last game of the season was going to be the last time we worked full time. We didn't want to have to deal with it. And so the last game comes. And now the last out is made, and we're in the post-game show, and now we got to deal with it. And now we start talking. And I used to kid him about he could cry at the drop of a hat. I said, you can cry with the sun coming up or a door opening or whatever it is. And I was not made that way. But we get into the conversation, that last game together, and I couldn't get through it. I started crying. And he said, "By God, you need my help, don't you?" I said, "Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I need your help." I could stand here all night. You're going to hear a lot of people talk. I can tell you that there's nobody in this room who loved Joe Nuxhall any more than I did. And I'll miss him every day that we walk into a ballpark around baseball or we sit down in a broadcast booth. It was truly a unique relationship, and it's one that I'll cherish for the rest of my life. Thank you very much.
Okay, folks, I've got Marty Brenneman here, good-time friend, longtime friend of Joe Nuxhall. Marty, can you share with the people viewing this today a little story about Joe?
Well, you know, we were together full-time for 31 years, which I'm proud to say is longer than any broadcast duo in the history of Major League Baseball. And I think as the years went by, especially after I took up golf, he and I got even closer. And I've often said that in all the years that we worked together, I don't think that he and I were upset at each other more than 3 or 4 times in the course of the relationship.
Yeah.
And I used to joke with him. I said, I think more than anything, it has to do with the fact that we're both left-handed. We're both a little bit different. But I'll never forget the night in Houston, playing in the Astrodome, and this was in the late 70s, and he'd leave in the 9th inning to go do the Star of the Game show. And it was a long haul from the broadcast booths or press level at the Astrodome to the elevators and down to the clubhouse level. And then you had to walk a long ways to get to the clubhouse. So he left in the top of the 9th. The Reds had a lead going into the 9th inning, and so he left. And bottom of the 9th came, and the Astros scored 2 runs and tied the game up and sent it to extra innings. And there was scoreless 10th inning, and Joe still hadn't come back. And now we go to the 11th. The Reds score a run. I said, well, they're going to win the game. Houston tied up in the bottom of the 11th. Game went 16 innings, and he never came back.
He didn't make it.
I was hotter than a match. And when I got downstairs, I said, what the hell's wrong with you? I said, you can't leave me up there to do the game. He said, every time I started to come back, something happened and somebody got the lead, and I figured, well, the game was going to be over. And really, as I look back on it, that might have been the only time in 31 years that we worked full-time that I was ever upset at him.
Yeah. Well, you know, I remember Joe was telling me a few stories about you guys golfing. I think you went over in Indiana and golfed quite a bit.
Yeah, we did. We played a lot.
When I was talking to him about that, I think he said you had more clubs wrapped around the trees than anybody he's ever done.
Well, I did. The funny thing is, we were playing golf one day, and I don't know whether it was San Diego or Los Angeles, and I think it was San Diego, and I hit a bad shot, and I threw my club, and the club went through a steel fence or a wrought iron fence into somebody's backyard. And so I walked over, and Joe's watching the whole thing. I walked over, and I am cussing a blue streak. And I reach through the fence to grab my club, and I hear a voice saying, "Sir, can I help you?" And it was a woman, and there were shrubs that I couldn't see that she was there. And obviously, she heard everything I said, which was not good. And I thought Joe was going to fall out of the golf cart. He thought that was the funniest thing he'd ever heard.
Yeah, Joe was a good guy, and I know you miss him terribly.
Well,
we all
we had
miss
a great
him.
time.
And we're here tonight to celebrate and continue the tradition of Joe's projects, his philanthropic projects he had going. And we're here tonight. We'll get back in there. We'll let you go back. I appreciate you coming back.
My pleasure.
Here with
Thank
us.
you.
All right, thank you.
Baseball was Joe's life, largely because of the game and even more importantly because of the people. And when you look at Reds history and look at the people that wore uniforms like Dusty signed in honor of Nuxie this week, the people that wore those uniforms, each and every one of them were very special to Joe. Some of them as teammates, some of them as young players he watched early in their careers, develop into major leaguers, become stars. But the ones he cherished the most were the ones who, just like Nuxie, stayed in the community. And we're fortunate to have a number of former players who have been so instrumental in the growth, the vitality, the success of our community. And there's nobody that would be on that list that would be any higher than our next former Red player. We'll tell a Nuxie story or two. He was a great player. He was a great coach. It's always great to see him at the ballpark because his smile lights up the room every time he comes in. Let's welcome Tommy Helms.
That was shocking. I thought I was going to be up here with three guys. I don't know how to be by myself up here. Thank you. Now I'm lost a little bit. Anyway, I just first of all, I'd like to say Nuxie has done all this stuff in the community, but I still got to say to the Nuxall family, Kim and Don Setta, I want to think about, he was a little bit better player than he gets recognition for. And like Marty said, he was a great storyteller. We were talking today, you know, like when you play ball and you're around broadcasters and writers and everything for a period of 162 games, all this stuff in the clubhouse don't ever come out. But I remember one day, Nuxall come into Marty and he says, Marty, my consultant and lawyer told me we ought to invest in diamonds. Marty said, what do you mean invest in diamonds? Well, he's telling everybody, because he knows it's going to get around the clubhouse, everybody should invest in diamonds for one reason. He just bought Don Setta a 4-carat diamond, and that got him off the hook. Nobody had to get on him anymore. That's just the way Joe Nuxall was. Just that kind of guy, clubhouse guy and everything. But anything, what I can't believe about Joe Nuxall is he always brought out the best of everybody. About 30 minutes ago, I'm sitting there having a wine with Cadillac Charlie Shank, and 3 ball players come up, Welsh, Hume, me, and Ben says, get over here and take a picture. I took the picture, and I'm telling you, this brings out the best in anything. Ben says, sorry to bother you, Helms. If that's not funny, I don't know what the hell to say up here. Anyway, I'm going to get off of here because I didn't expect this. I thought I was going to be up here with 3 guys. Kim and Don Setta, we love the Nuxall family, and I wish everything in the future is going to be as great as tonight. Thank you very much.
We were going to have you up with 3 guys, Tommy, but we figured you could handle it by yourself, and you did great. And we have just a parade of one great friend of Joe Nuxall's after another. George, you said it as well as anybody, that this Reds organization has turned out so many just fine human beings along the way, and I think largely due because even if they weren't when they came to the Reds, they were after they met Joe Nuxall and hung around Joe for a long time.
Okay, folks, Chris Welch, longtime friend of Joe Nuxall, is here tonight to celebrate at the Hope Project. Chris, can you share with the viewers just a little bit about Joe?
Well, thank you. I'm delighted to be here, and obviously none of us would be here, and none of this work would be getting done if it wasn't for Joe. I met Joe back in 1981. When I was a player with the San Diego Padres. In fact, I wanted to meet him long before that because I grew up in Cincinnati. In fact, I played on a summer baseball team with his son, Kim, and I always wanted to know, when Kim, you're going to bring your dad around? Because, of course, he was a famous person to us growing up in Cincinnati.
Sure.
And I beat the Reds in a 4-hit shutout back in 1981. That was the Reds' one of the best years they had, in which they led the majors in wins, but they didn't make the playoffs because that was the strike year that the players had, and they had 2 halves, and the Reds didn't win either half of the season, so they didn't make the playoffs. And I reached the pinnacle of my career that night when I was on the Joe Nuxall post-game show.
Yep.
And I was on the Star of the Game show. He interviewed an away player. He knew I was from Cincinnati, and I swear Joe was more nervous than I was.
Is that right?
I have a tape of that. And I listened to it. I listened to it just a few months ago, as a matter of fact. And he sounded nervous, and I sounded nervous, and we were laughing, and we really hit it off well because we were both left-handers. And then when I had the opportunity to come back as a broadcaster to Cincinnati after I played a year with the Reds, there's so many different things that Joe touched your life. He and I became pretty good golf buddies.
Yep.
Because even long before Marty Brennaman took up the game of golf again, Joe and I and some other players and guys who'd hang around the ball club would meet down in the lobby of the hotel, 6:30 in the morning, and boy, you better not be late when Joe's ready to go play golf, because that meant it was something serious. And we'd go all over the place, and if you ever made a wrong turn on your way to the golf course, boy, Joe would let you have it all the way to the golf course and all the way back too. In fact, I remember one game in particular we were out in Half Moon Bay, California, which is outside of San Francisco. We had a par 3, and the par 3 was over water. There was the tee, and there was the green, and there was nothing but water in between, and the wind was blowing a little bit, and Joe pulled out a 7-iron, his normal club from 150 yards at the time, and he proceeded to hit it in the water. Then he hit another one in the water, and another one in the water. And with each successive shot, Joe got angrier and angrier, and he had a little temper, And now I said, Joe, why don't you just admit that you can't get over with a 7-iron and you better go to something else, maybe more of a club? I can get over with that. So he proceeded to hit about 13 balls in the water. I think he was out of golf balls, and he turned to Marty and he said, "Can I borrow a golf ball?" And Marty said, "No." So those are the kind of things that, excuse me, that Joe would do, and that we look back on. It just brightens our day thinking about it. And you know, he had a heart as big as the city of Fairfield and Hamilton put together, and that's why people loved him so much, and that's why we're here tonight.
He was in this area, and the entire Southwest Ohio. He was everybody's friend. He would walk up to you. It's like he knew you all your life, and he remembered names. I think that's the incredible part about Joe. He would give as much as he could give. He would do anything for you. And I think it was you that he was talking about was the worst golfer other than Brenneman.
Could have been.
And
well, I don't know about that.
Well, Brenneman wrapped the clubs around the trees. And I remember Joe calling, I think it was per clunk, that's what, per clunk, Welch. And I think that was just the balls going in the water. But now here you are saying it was Joe with the balls in the water.
Well, I'll tell you another story about Joe. We were playing in California again, and we played on, it was a wet morning where there was still dew on the grass, and the ground was very slick. And we parked on a hill, and he was driving a golf cart. And I was on one side of the fairway, and he was way off the fairway on the other side, but down the hill. I said, "Joe, better be careful down there because it's kind of slippery." And he got out of the golf cart, and he parked it, and that golf cart started to slide. Not roll with the top, but the brake was on, and it started to slide and spin like a top, going down the hill. And Joe, all he could think about was having to pay that repair bill. So he grabbed on the back of the cart, and now that cart's dragging him around in a circle as he's going all the way down the hill. He finally let it go, and it hit up against the fence and stopped. And he didn't have much damage to it. He looked around, and the fence was all bent over, and it was ruined. He looked around to see if anybody saw him and got back in the golf cart and said, "Okay, everything's okay, let's go."
Great story.
We've had a lot of fun like that, and the best part about it was you could get on Joe and have some fun and ride herd on him a little bit, and he'd come right back at you. And he was a man's man, a guy that really liked to be around the guys. I can still, close your eyes and see him sitting in the clubhouse, talking to players, whether it was players like Eric Davis and Davey Concepcion, the guys who played along the years that I played, or if it's younger players that have been here even the last couple of years. They listen to Joe. For some reason, you meet Joe Nuxhall right away, and you realize whatever he told you was a word of wisdom. So you better shut your lips and listen up.
Yep, he was that way. Good guy.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you being here tonight, Chris.
Our next guy was a longtime Red. He was an all-star pitcher, and he doesn't live in the area. He flew up here especially for this dinner tonight. Let's welcome him back. In my book, he was an all-star as a pitcher, an all-star as a coach, and certainly as an all-star as a human being. Let's welcome Tom Hume.
Thank you very much. Well, I was glad to see another speaker up here bring papers out to read because I had to write on cards so I could remember. But I come here tonight to honor a man that was a mentor, a father figure to me during the season as long as I've been in Cincinnati, and that was Joe Nuxhall. He helped me so much as far as getting through different things to be able to experience the things as far as a major league player. I've known Joe for 33 years. I met him in my first big league camp in 1975, although I have known Kim a little bit longer. Kim and I started out together in 1972 and as minor league players, and we just kind of hit it off from then on. We've always kind of kept in touch, but it even got better after Joe and met him. But I'm here today because I know Kim said it earlier, because of relationships. Relationships that I've made in the game of baseball, and God has blessed me so much for that. People that I've met, and that's the reason I'm here tonight. And as I said, 36 years ago in spring training, and he's today knowing, Kim, that he is the reason why Joe is because I just saw a lot in them, and I know that's the reason why he is. Don Zeta, his mother, and as we all know, that's the reason Joe is what he was, because he was driving the straight line when she was around. The thing about Joe is even better. You know, I remember when the first spring I met all these players. I was in awe of my first major league camp. You know, it's Johnny Bench, Tommy wasn't there. He was already gone. But George Foster, and all of these people. But then I see Joe Nuxhall, born in Cincinnati, moved from here when I was young. Knowing Joe was 15 years old when he played in the major leagues, and I was like, you got to be kidding me! 15 years old. I mean. As Marty said before, he was 11 years old in '53. I wasn't born yet, Marty. I don't think so. But I just couldn't imagine being 15 years old and playing in the major leagues. I mean, I had a hard time not playing in junior major league. And as time passed, we became friends, and as Joe would sit around and talk to us, I knew that when he said my first name, Tom, I better look at him in the eyes because he had something serious to say. And Kim, I can tell you that I can tell you what it's all about and why, because there's so many things that have happened and with the people around these areas and just the person that he was. And I have a thing here that's why I'll miss Joe. I'll miss listening to him tell baseball stories, listening to him and Bernie Stowe go back and forth with each other and making fun of each other in the clubhouse, telling each other that one's fat, one's too little, one's too skinny, too many donuts. Listening to him talk about food. Joe could talk about food, and he loved his liverwurst and donuts. As I said, you know, we go to St. Louis. Each ballpark had a certain food that he would eat there. Hearing his voice, or even not hearing his voice on the radio. Sometimes we'd have a little bit of lull in the action there, but we always knew Joe was on. And listening to him argue with Marty. I mean, you know, maybe he didn't do it at the park, but when we go to play golf, it was back and forth all the time. And plus, listening to him be the positive side in the booth. Because we know that the other side was a little bit, you know. But I know that Joe was a little biased towards people, so we understand that since Joe played the game. I know. You were here before I got here, and you're here after I leave. I know. Caddying and chauffeuring for him on the golf course. Listening to him yell at Chris Welsh to slow down on the way to the golf course because he's driving too fast. Always having words of encouragement. Doing the Star of the Game show when he couldn't get a player to do it, so I could get the free meal at Montgomery Inn. His compassion, his care, his friendship, his wisdom, his kindness, his sternness, his direction. Never forgetting to ask me about my family, and he would always ask me by their names. Joking with my son Bradley when he'd come to the ballpark. Marty and Joe would always get on him, but he'd fire right back on him. Joe would call him tons of fun, and Bradley called him Tubby. Marty had other words for him. I think one of the other things was when I'd walk up to him and poke him in the side and watch him jump. I mean, it was just something he could not stand. Butchering players' names on the radio. And he didn't even care. And just being around. Watching him limp in there, come in to visit us, sit down. And finally, as I head for third and round third and head for home, I just want to say thank you, Joe, and I'll miss you. And thank you, Kim and Bonnie, and tell your mom, and I love you all, and anything that, like Tom said, anything anybody ever needs. And it's just been a great experience. Thank you.
I've got George and Tom here, good friends of Joe. folks introduce yourself and let our viewers know a little more information of that friendship with Joe.
It was a very special night for a lot of reasons. Number one, because Nux doesn't have his golf clubs tonight.
No, he doesn't. I'm Tom Hume, and Joe and I go back a long ways. And I just made the trip up from Florida because he's just so special to me, that a person he was and what he meant to me.
Yeah.
You know, when you talk Joe Nuxhall, you talk about not just a great baseball player, not just a great broadcaster, not just a great person, but a combination of all of those things. And I think we were so fortunate to spend time with him, whether it be at the ballpark or on the golf course or just sitting on the dugout steps. And even if you never met Joe Nuxhall, you probably know Joe Nuxhall because he was such a special man.
Yes.
Well, especially up this part of the country. I mean, all you can say is, I remember when I first met him, I was in awe of everything that went on, and all of a sudden there's Joe Nuxhall. Well, I mean, there was only one 15-year-old to make it in the major leagues, and that was quite a feat for me to even see somebody like that, especially being from Cincinnati. And I mean, I can't say enough about him. I mean, that's to me, that's just the way I feel. Sometimes I'm almost speechless as far as why I'm here.
What was it like the first time you were on his post-game show?
I just kind of really didn't know what to do. I would be like, yeah, yes. I was probably one of those guys that wasn't a very good interviewer because it was just yes and no. It wasn't like, well, yeah, I felt like this or did that. Joe would as he always did, stammer through it, and I did it back.
What was your favorite golf story with Nuxie?
Well, I don't know. There was a lot of them. Probably ones that I probably shouldn't tell.
We'll save that for later?
I'll save that for later.
I can remember when I left ESPN and finally came to Cincinnati to broadcast, and I remember that first spring training game and sitting next to Marty Brennaman and Joe Nuxhall, and I looked at Nuxie and I said, well, now my career is complete, because in my mind, I was sitting next to not one but two Hall of Famers. And I talk about Marty Brennaman, a Hall of Famer as a broadcaster, Joe Nuxhall, a Hall of Famer in every way you could imagine. And in my mind, he's a broadcaster that belongs in the Baseball Hall of Fame for broadcasting too. Joe Nuxhall, the very best.
Yeah, you can't get a better guy than Joe, folks. We're going to go back and join the gala in there tonight, the Hope Project. We appreciate you guys coming and being a part of this.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Probably not a lot of people know this, but in 1983, which was John's last year in the major leagues in baseball, we were in Pittsburgh going to a movie. And we're going down the escalator, and there was another guy coming up the escalator, and he goes, oh, that's Franco Harris. He's waving at him and everything. So on the way in the movie, we're sitting there, we're watching the movie. I don't even remember what it was. He probably does, because he had a memory like Joe Nuxhall. He says, I think I'm going to retire. I said, you're going to retire? I think I'm going to retire this year. That's it. So I would have to say that it was pretty much the first one to know he was going to retire, and he kept it a secret. And I even kept it a secret for a while. I really didn't talk that much then anyway. But he kind of brought me out of my shell sometimes. So, but the next guest, which one of my best friends in baseball, one of my best catchers I ever had in my whole life, and that anybody had in their whole life, Hall of Famer Johnny Bench.
Well, we're all blessed tonight, obviously, by the fact that we had so many wonderful people here that joined us and who care enough about that. And all you people who keep investing this money in that lady who must be, you're out of your mind, really. Okay, honey? She said she wanted an autograph in the bar, but I didn't have any idea it would come to that. We are here for one reason, obviously, and that's to continue on with the legacy of one great man. The one thing I guess I was affected by in my life was a friend of mine whose wife had passed away. And I said, I am so sorry. And he said, don't be. He said, you realize how lucky I was to have that woman in my life for 50 years? We can sit and worry and think about the bad things that Joe's now gone. But we will always dwell on the fact that for all these years we had him. For 31 years, for Marty, for me since 1966 in my first spring training, and watching him in the rattiest old undergarments that you ever saw in your life. It was pathetic. It stunk. He would come into that locker room after, and then throughout his, in the batting practice, which he was most of his career, even though we talk about his greatness. And it was always a challenge when we got to spring training and when we had the regular season that Joe would challenge each and every one of us. And he would come in there in the locker room and he would sit there when you could really smoke with a good authority in the clubhouse and have a nice cold one ready. And it was still the same sweatshirt that he had in 1966. And this was 1980. We goosed Joe. We did everything to him. And then one day, he said, and it really got to the point that some guys just overdid it. No! And, he would go along there, and he would turn around and everything. And it was funny, and I never would do it because I realized that, it was just like, I never wanted to have somebody just goose me or take me in the neck or have me jump or learn something about it. And one day he had a bat in his hand, and somebody snuck up behind him and goosed him. And fortunately, they ducked because he swung around with the bat and took out half of a locker. Nobody ever really goosed him after that. Can you imagine the wonderful assortment of people that we have here tonight that have donated their money, given their time, and they've all had all these experiences with Joe? We're all better for it. We were all lucky in our lives to know him. We will live on with his memory. As I said about the ball game the other day, Joe would make a guest appearance. He makes his appearance all the time because we like my mom and dad who are no longer with us. I talk to them. I'm with them. They know I care about them. They know they're part of me. It's a joy in my life to know that my father wanted me to grow up, to me be a Major League Baseball player, and then go to Cooperstown and see me enshrined in the Hall of Fame and to be a part of it. He passed away a couple of years later, but that meant so much to him. It means so much to me to have my son Bobby a few years back when we were listening to the ball game and asking me who was Sis Pellicudis or Pis Sellicudis. I think that was the name. What did Pis Sellicudis that he actually did? His real name was Chris Pellicudis, but of course in Joe's inimitable way. You all know it. I mean, the thing about it is, and the thing was tonight we remember so many things when so many stories come up because when Tommy, who couldn't walk and chew gum and couldn't talk, you couldn't get him to talk, and comes up and gives what really was Joe Nuxhall's personification of what he was. And to think about that dead air time, to be able to fly in from another city and to get in the car and to be able to turn on the radio and get dead air was so wonderful so many times. I know, Marty, when you look at it like that. And then he'd go to the Star of the Game show. He never asked one question. You remember, he'd just make a statement. Well, that was good. The score was 6-2. Yeah, Joe, I hit that 2-run homer there, and I was really proud of that one. And there was a single somewhere. I got that, Joe, and everything. Joe, my retirement night on September 17th, I hit a home run. And I got to hear the replay after the game, and it was Joe, and he was crying. He was crying when I hit the home run. And if you've heard that, a lot of you probably don't sit around and listen to it like I do, but when you hear really Joe, you could hear the tears in his eyes. And then to be out there after the game, and they'd given me 388 golf balls. Tommy was there for the awards and everything else. And they gave me 388 golf balls because that's the number of home runs I had hit. And then after the game, when I hit that other home run, somehow Joe found another golf ball. I still to this day believe he took one from the pile. But I was a little too lazy to go count to see if it was right, if it was exactly 388. These golf balls you wouldn't have used on a driving range, so it really didn't make any difference which way they were. We're honored, the Nuxhall family, the Hamilton family, the Fairfield family, because you all own Joe Nuxhall. And we unlike you, we have all the experiences to draw back on to know what Joe was all about and why you're here. Everybody knows that. But we are so lucky in our lives to have Joe Nuxhall. He'll be with us always. Let's laugh, let's enjoy, let's be a part of what this is all about, and realize that there was only one Joe Nuxhall, and that he was a part of our lives and always will be. Thank you.
Longtime sports legend Johnny Bench, good friend of Joe's. Johnny, can you share with our folks there a story about Joe? Just
well,
I'm sure there's a lot of them.
Too many to relate for so many people. And the thing about Joe is that we had such a great relationship, just respect more than anything, confrontations in batting practice day after day after day, and the passion that he shared for the game was infectious on all of us. And you know, he was one of a kind. When people turned the radio in to listen to the ball game, they wanted to hear what Joe was saying, and he laughed at himself so much. He was self-effacing, and I guess that's the one thing about Joe. He was just a good old boy, and he was our friend, he was our father, he was our brother, he was all of those things. And you know, the night I hit my 389th home run, when I heard the replay, Joe was crying, and that's how the affection was for me. And when he came out, I think he was the happiest guy in the world when we came out for a star of the game afterwards, and he was able, they had given me 388 golf balls, and he somehow, either he took one out of it, I didn't count them afterwards, either he took that golf ball away and then added it to it saying it was 389. It was a slick move, but Joe was very slick anyway.
He was a good guy. I know when we were looking at some of the video, the movie film that Joe had, he has some movie film with you in it from back in the 70s, and it's actually playing out there on the big screen tonight. And I know he spoke very highly of you, and I think he was so impressed on your abilities that, I mean, it's stuff he shared with us over the years. And he was, you said it right, he was like a father figure to all of the Reds. And anybody that crossed his path came across as knowing Joe and walked away with a good memory. You know.
Maybe that's why we're all here?
I'm sure that's why we have over 500 people in here. We'll let you get back in the room. Appreciate you being here with us tonight.
Just looking around the crowd, and we want to say a welcome and a hi, hello, and great to have you here. Joe Price. Joe, stand up, let everybody welcome you. Georgie doesn't want to talk tonight because he's going to put us all to shame if he did talk. George, great having you here. You know, for those of you that are Reds fans, you can really appreciate one thing. I'll give you a story from the Hall of Fame. Every year when I go to Cooperstown, there are pockets of Hall of Famers. The best table, the best group, the best feeling of camaraderie each and every July at Cooperstown comes from Bench, Seaver, Perez, the whole crew. Hal McCoy when he was up, Marty when he was up. When you talk about Hall of Famers that get together time after time, spend time together, Sparky comes in there and they start telling stories, and it just doesn't end. So I think we can all be proud to say thanks, JB, for giving us the moment you gave us on the field, but thanks also for the legacy you leave from the Big Red Machine era. There's a Clooney in the house. The original. You know, we honor Nuxie because of what he meant to our communities. We also honor what he means to baseball and to this community. Well, when you talk about Nick Clooney, you talk about somebody who cares about this community, who's dedicated his life, and we're happy to have him here to tell a story or two about Nuxie. Nick Clooney. Nick.
Till tonight, I didn't realize that I had something in common with Johnny Bench. I also have never goosed Joe Nuxhall. I think the most horrifying thing I heard all evening and the second most horrifying thing I heard was from Tommy Hume, who, if I understood him correctly, said that Nux loved liverwurst and donuts. At the same time, Gotcha, all right. Yeah, I'm up here not because Nux and I, our relationship was on the diamond or in the broadcast booth. It was not. Instead, it was at least 200 chicken and peas dinners all over the tri-state and elsewhere. I think the only person who was the chairman of more obscure charities than I was Joe Nuxhall. God help us. I have no idea. There was something about Akron and little cars that came down on their own, down the hill. We both chaired that. There was a bicycle parade, and that was Highland Heights, Kentucky, We were both chairmen of that. I'm not going to take any of your time. I miss him too. God, I miss him, But I'm here actually to verify a story, and Donzetta, you were there and you heard it. This is another one of the chicken and peas dinners. It was over in northern Kentucky. And Betty White was there, and Joe and I, and we were all being honored for something. I have no idea what it was. It's Kentucky. I hope it was a bourbon festival. At least I would have enjoyed it, But there was a gentleman just about Joe's and my age who came up and told me a story about Joe, and I got up and repeated it, and I asked Joe if it was true, and Joe just gave that enigmatic smile he always gave, oh, buddy, I think, yeah, that's probably pretty close. Here's how it's supposed to have gone. There's somebody here has to verify it for me. This is how it's supposed to have gone after Joe 1944 and before he came back to the bigs in 52. Somewhere in that mix, he was at a minor league, on the road at a minor league ballpark, and this fella swore it was Moorhead, Kentucky. I have no idea if that's true or not. But according to him, Joe and he were rooming at this rooming house, minor league ball, and they got into this room, and it was really old and really bad. And it had, when you went in right there on a washstand, there was a bowl and a pitcher, and there was no inside bathroom, was down the hall. But under the bed, there was this nice round porcelain vessel with a handle on it that went under the bed. Now, Joe had never seen one of those before, according to this gentleman. And he looked down at it and he laughed and he says, well, what's that? And brought it out and held it up and said, well, one thing about this place, they sure serve a heck of a cup of coffee. And then they both started laughing because the fellow told him what it was really for. And in the Malay, he apparently dropped it and broke it. So now, and this was, God knows what that might have cost, probably 15, 20 cents back in those days. But he was going to have to account for it. He knew that. And so he went downstairs to tell the fella at the desk what he had done. And when he got down there, the fella at the desk was gone, and there was a young girl at the desk. It was a pretty young girl at the desk, which made him immediately tongue-tied, trying to tell what had happened. And he said, excuse me, miss, upstairs I had a little accident. There was a glass thing and I broke it. I didn't mean to. It was just an accident. I just broke it. And she said, well, what glass thing? She says, well, it had a handle and I broke it. And she says, what do you mean? The pitcher? And he said, no, ma'am, the catcher. Is it true? Huh? Sure it's true. Sure it's true. Kim, my friend, what's it all about? Just look around you, huh? All the way back there, and all the way back there, and all the way down there, and all the way right here. What's it all about? It's about all of this. 5 months after, I think it's a bigger crowd than last year when he was here. He wouldn't be pleased with that. But you should be, because what it means and what it's all about is that hope is forever. Thank you for inviting me.
For so many years in Cincinnati, we were lucky to have Joe Nuxhall on a daily basis bringing us Reds baseball. And if you're a real Reds fan, of course, you'd listen to WLW and you would tune in way before the ball game would ever begin. In fact, you probably tuned in the afternoon because you knew at one point in that afternoon visit, during a very funny show, you'd hear Joe Nuxhall and he'd give you a little preview of the ball game. And it would become somewhat of a tradition for players to tease, goose, tickle, pinch, prod, throw pebbles at Joe Nuxhall while he was on the radio. Not that the guy at the other end needed any help being funny, but it was funny seeing Nuxhall try to keep his composure when he was on the other end with Gary Burbank. And Gary Burbank, when he left the airwaves of WLW, certainly has left a void. And we're going to fill that void right now and bring him up to the podium, tell a little story about Joe. Gary?
You got a midget setting for this? Mark. First off, to answer the questions about retirement, I keep getting, how is it? It's, some of you know, it's like the guy who jumped off the 10th floor of a building, and when he went by the 5th floor, someone yelled out, "How's it going?" So far, so good. I know there's a splat at the end, but I'm going to enjoy the breeze on the way down. You know? And enjoying the breeze of life, and that was what I did with Nuxie, like Chris was just saying, so many days. And there were times, oh God, when the Reds were just sucking wind, 15 games out, it's August, and nobody cared. So, like you said, Tommy, we talked about food. Joe would talk about, you know, this and that, and he was always very optimistic. You know, if we did have to talk about the Reds when they were 15 games out, Joe would find something good to say. And he was like, I guess, you know, some people see the glass half empty, some see it half full. Joe would see the glass and say, "Shouldn't there be a milkshake in there?" And a true story, Joe taught me how to drink a milkshake with one hand and smoke a Marlboro Light with the other. But there was one instance where, and people don't realize what a good interview Joe really was. Joe could talk, I mean, just as long as you wanted him to. And one day, I think we were in Mount Adams at the time, Joe was on the phone, and I asked my first question, and when I did, I don't know what the heck happened, but all of a sudden I had this pain in my chest. I was like, wham! And and he's answering my question. I couldn't breathe, and it was hurting, and I got up, and I'm walking around, and he's still going on and on with the answer. And I'm like, "Elizabeth, I'm coming to see you." Yeah. And I was probably 3 minutes, but the way Joe would talk on the air, he would kind of come to a point to where he'd answered the question. If he didn't hear anything, you know, there was no dead air at that point. He'd just keep right on going with another version of the story. And after 3 or 4 minutes, and that's a long time on the air, you know, I sat down and I felt better. Okay, and I'd continue to talk. And then, okay, Joe, so-and-so, and he'd just go right on with the rest of the question. Never missed a lick. So in that respect of being somebody who could, just talk forever, it was great to have an interview like that. You could take a nap if you wanted to sometime, because Joe would go on as long as you wanted him to go. But there was one story I have to tell you about. One of the most fun times to watch Joe was at Dream Week or Baseball Heaven. I don't know if any of you guys have been there for that, but all the pros would come out. We'd have the best time with these guys. And it was so much fun to watch Joe in the hotel lobby with about 40 or 50, doctors, lawyers, businessmen, very successful. He had these guys spellbound like little 5-year-old kids, just sitting there, wow, listening to Joe talk down in the lobby of that hotel. But the one story I want to relate, now, first off, I'll have to preface this by saying, who actually believes that Joe Nuxhall agreed to be Willie Cunningham's patsy? Raise your hand. And if you do, you didn't know Joe very well. He was nobody's patsy. And I think Joe had drafted Willie that year on the team. and I was on the other team, and Willie was pitching. Willie had a fastball, you can relate to this, 37 miles an hour. But he threw junk. And when you get guys like us, you know, I mean, we might hit a ball coming 37 miles an hour, but you throw a curveball and we pee in our pants. And so Cunningham is on the mound. We're playing for the championship, in fact. And Cunningham had done okay, and we had two guys on base, and we're down 1 run, guys on second and third. Joe's the manager of the team, and don't let anything. Joe was competitive, as you know. Joe would, you know, he wanted to win that game. And Cunningham's 37-mile-an-hour fastball had gone down to 28. And so Knucksy is walking out to the mound, and he walks out to Cunningham, and he looks at him and says, you're coming out. And Willie is, no, you can't take me out now, because he wanted to win. The guy coming to bat was some guy from New Jersey, and I can't remember his name, but he talked like New Jersey type guy like this, and he, hey guys, let's go potty. And you would say, I pottied this morning. Oh, but he had not, I gotta quit. I'm not Italian either. You know? He had not hit the ball all week. This guy had never had this far away from the ball every swing, never hit the ball. Cunningham knew that and said he wanted to win this game so he could pound on his chest and look at me and go, in the dugout. So he's begging, pleading his case, and finally Knucksy just gives in. All right, you better get this guy. And Willie's thinking, I can't miss. And so Knucky's back in the dugout, and Willie winds up, and here comes the 37-mile-an-hour fastball. And this guy, he's hit like, and whack, and he hits the ball. He hits it right back through the box, right at Cunningham. Cunningham dives out of the way. The ball goes into center field, 2-run score, we win the championship. And the last I saw of Knucksy and Cunningham was running to center field, and I didn't see Joe run this fast ever in my life. Joe was running behind him. It looked like a cartoon, arms flapping everywhere. Cunningham trying to climb the fence. He got away from Joe. True story. Willie knew how mad Joe was, and Willie went back, packed his stuff, got on a plane, and came back to Cincinnati. He wasn't going to face him. But we just had so many great times together on the air, and I, like everybody else here, you can't know Joe without loving him. I did. Thank you guys so much for inviting me, and thank you.
Tonight, George Grant and I have been honored to be the MCs of this terrific dinner tonight. But the real master of ceremonies is about ready to take the stage. Without his facility here tonight, we would never have this kind of dinner. It was tremendous last year, and it's even better tonight. How about a warm welcome for Jungle Jim?
Thank you, thank you. I wasn't scheduled tonight, but I wanted to say something for Joe. I'm such an airhead. All these years, Joe, hey, Jimbo this, Jimbo that. I looked around and says, how come he never shops in the store? And somebody looked at me and said, he's a Kroger spokesman. I just like, okay, all right, but I'll be real quick. I'll tell you something, the beauty of Joe, why they were at his funeral, why there were long lines. Joe could talk to the best pitcher in baseball on the team, and he could talk to the guy selling hot dogs, and he could talk to the guy cleaning the stadium, and they're all the same. That's why we love Joe. Thank you.
Well, if you haven't noticed yet, the Reds won today, and they're making great strides on the field. I know that Bob Castellini and his ownership group are very dedicated to winning, and hopefully this will be the year. But it is the year so far in another part of the Reds organization, and they've made great strides over the last few years since the inception of the Reds Community Fund. And now to bring us a special message from the Reds Community Fund, let's bring up the director of the Reds Community Fund, and you can't find a better director than this guy, Charlie Frank. Charlie?
Thank you, Chris. It was such a pleasure being here a year ago, and it's such a thrill to be back here even given the circumstances, to be able to celebrate with all of you. And I remember last year watching how hard Kim and Bonnie and Phil and Donzetta and Joe and the whole family worked to raise money and raise awareness for the Hope Project. And an announcement I'm about to share with you is arguably one of the most significant steps in their young history. And it's really a very, very exciting message that I'm going to bury for just a minute. The Reds Community Fund has partnered with the Joe Nuxhall Character Education Fund now for several years, and our missions, to say the very least, are spot on. Joe and Kim are all about character building, and our Reds Rookie Success League, which is our original outreach program, uses baseball as the backdrop and the common language, but it is also all about character building. And we thought we were pretty good at character building until we met Kim Nuxhall, and he's obviously taken that message and that effort to a whole new level. So when Kim and Joe announced a year ago that our Reds Rookie Success League, which launched in Butler County at Waterworks Park in Fairfield just last June, that was one of the 5 tenets of the Hope Project, it was humbling to say the least. And there's so many important partners that have brought that dream to life. This summer we'll be entering the 6th year of our free, non-competitive, co-ed character building baseball league. We're so fortunate to have the folks from Prasco, the Arrington family, that have supported the launch of our newest program. We'll be launching our 3rd program just this summer in Mason and Warren County, working with the Arringtons and Prasco. But the other tenet that the Reds Community Fund has been involved with, along with the Nuxhall Character Education Fund, is the Miracle League. And for those of you who aren't aware of the Miracle League, it is a baseball program dedicated to children with disabilities. And its mission for the past 10 years, since it came to life outside of Atlanta, was to give every child, every family, the opportunity to celebrate being a part of a team, to be part of America's pastime. And for those of you that have witnessed any part of it, it is compelling and powerful beyond words. So again, we were extremely excited and humbled when Joe and Kim and the family shared with us that another one of the 5 tenets of the Hope Project was going to be the construction of a Miracle League field in Butler County. We're working on one currently with the Rotary Club of Cincinnati and Western Hills, which we hope will come to fruition this summer. But our second project, the one that we've had on our radar working with Joe and Kim since about a year ago, is right here in the Fairfield-Hamilton area. And about 4 weeks ago, Kim invited me to join him for a meeting with a gentleman by the name of Walt Lunsford, who's here tonight. And Walt represents, along with 3 of the other board members, the Hatton Foundation. And for those of you unaware, the Hatton Foundation's mission is also absolutely right on with the Nuxhall Character Education Fund, supporting programs with children who are in need, children with disabilities. Walt, a longtime family friend of the Nuxhall family, and following about a 60-minute discussion, Walt stepped up and looked at Kim and told him, "You can count on me, Kim. You can count on me for a $500,000 matching gift for the Miracle League project in Butler County," which, needless to say, is an enormous step forward for this project to make it one of the key tenets, again, of the Nuxhall Hope Project, a reality. I'd like to ask Walt Lunsford to please stand and be recognized for his generous donation and his commitment to this project. The Hatton Foundation, among many great things in this community, has supported the Anthony Munoz Foundation. I know Anthony's here tonight. They were a founding partner in that great organization. So Walt, my hat is tipped to you. Great job. Thank you for your support. And one last message on behalf of the Reds. As you may know, and I know Bob referenced it earlier, June 10th is going to be possibly the final piece of this incredible sequence celebrating the life of Joe Nuxhall and his importance to this community, his absolutely incalculable importance. And we are going to have many special events that day. Anybody attending that night, which is also Hamilton night, will receive a a replica bronze statue. Life-size might be a little hard to take to your seat. So I think we'll settle for a replica statue of Joe. There will be all sorts of ceremonies pregame. That will be the culmination of the drawing for Joe's Lincoln Continental, which hopefully will be another very successful fundraiser for the Character Education Fund. And for everybody, when you leave tonight, you'll have the opportunity to pick up a Reds magnetic schedule, which is a giveaway item for this weekend. But the reason we wanted them here tonight was because there's a special patch that goes along with it. And this is also a magnet that you can attach to your refrigerator or to your car or to your heart, whatever suits you. But it's the black Knucksy patch that the Reds will be featuring on their uniform all season. So I ask everybody on your way out to please make sure you pick that up. Thank you very much, and Kim and the family, congratulations.
Never ask Knucksy who his favorite player was, because almost every one of them was his favorite player. The ones who came over in trades, the ones who came through the organization and beat the odds to become special players. And then there were those who were just very special people, not just the way they played the game, but the way they carried themselves on the field and off the field. We have a special tape message from one of those, one of our favorite Reds of all time. You know who he is.
Joe Nuxhall. What can I say, Knucksy? When I first came to the Reds back in '98, I was a 23-year-old little kid, and I just remember coming into the clubhouse and being welcomed by open arms by Joe Nuxhall, and getting to know this guy, thinking, "Whoa, what a nice guy this is," and he's the announcer and all this stuff. And then I realized what an icon he was. But I just thought that was fitting because that's who Knucksy was. I mean, he was a guy who treated everybody the same. He never thought of himself as any greater than anybody else, and for that I was so grateful, and he was such a great role model for me as far as the way to treat people. And you know, for me, Nux was one of the greatest people I've ever met. And you know, I remember that first year in '98 when I realized what kind of impact he had on the city of Cincinnati and what he meant to so many people there. And I started to realize what he meant to me as the years went on, and I got to do some things with him, and Knucksy and I got to do the character education program with his son Kim, and I just got to realize the impact he was having on that community, and he was such a role model for me in that way, because he really did go out of his way for everybody, and he loved people so much. He loved, especially kids. He loved kids, and he wanted to make an impact on them. And I guess when you think of Joe Nuxhall, and I still think of you a lot, Knucksy, it just makes me smile. And I'm grateful. I'm so thankful and grateful that I got to spend those 8 years with you. And I'm a better person because of it. And I think anybody that ever came in contact with you are better people because of it. And what a testimony for all the people that showed up at the high school that night. Thousands of people showed up in your memory. And you know, Knucksy, I just want to tell you thanks for all the love you've shown me and my family, and for all the love you've shown so many people. But I just want to say I'm such a better person because you've been in my life, and I'll always be grateful for that. And for this, I tip my cap. Thanks, Knox.
Just a brief postscript to that. The day that Sean Casey was traded, I was at the winter meetings and got word that the trade was going through, and Casey and I had talked a couple of times that week. He knew something was happening. On the phone from his home, he cried. He cried because he didn't want to leave Cincinnati. And I said, "Case, you're going home to Pittsburgh. That's your home." He said, "No, my home is Cincinnati. I was married. I have 3 kids that were born in Cincinnati. Those 3 kids walked through the Reds clubhouse and spent day after day, hour after hour with Knucksy. Cincinnati will always be my home." Knucksy had a special place in his heart for that man. And Sean Casey has a special place in his heart for Knucksy, this project, and as Kim knows, whenever there's something that needs to be done, he'll be back in town to do it. Thanks, Case. Got a treat for you. 7th inning stretch time. 7th inning stretch today was pretty good at the ballpark, wasn't it? You guys are going to love Johnny Cueto. You got a taste of him today. We watched them all during spring training. And when you stand up in that 7th inning stretch, and get a chance to sing and stretch and cheer, you're never going to hear a better rendition than you're going to hear tonight. Joe had a lot of people he was proud of, no more so than his great-grandchildren, Brooke and Trey. We're here to lead us in the 7th inning stretch. Come on up, hon.
You ready?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Take me out.
We need to stand up. We need to stand up. Take a stretch, yes.
Take me out to the ball game. Take me out to the crowd. Buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jacks. I don't care if I ever get back, for it's root, root, root for the home team. If they don't win, it's a shame, for it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the old ball game.
Awesome. Say, I love you, Papa Joe. Well done. Well done. Well done.
You all know our next guest as a All-Pro Hall of Fame football player. He's so much more than that. Number one, he's a great dad. Number two, he believes in this community and continues to serve the community. And number three, this guy was a darn good catcher at the University of Southern California that my old alma mater, my coach Rod Dedeaux, said he would have made it to the major leagues if he stuck with baseball. Let's welcome the Hall of Famer, Anthony Munoz.
Thanks, George. I'm sitting back there in the back, and I'm looking at the program. I'm looking around this room, and I see Reds owner, Bob Castellini. Of course, my friend George Foster, great outfielder. Johnny Bench, Hall of Fame catcher. And I see a Sean Casey video. Marty, Tom Brenneman, baseball announcers. Probably asking, why a football player? But let me tell you one thing, it is truly a privilege and an honor to be here tonight to tribute a great man. You know, I didn't get to know Joe like a lot of you did, a lot of the players every day in the locker room, the announcers, but I got to know Joe at a lot of different charitable events. And the lasting impression that Joe Nuxhall left with Anthony Munoz is every time I saw him, it was like he had his best friend next to him that he was talking to. It didn't matter who it was. Always had a smile. Always took time for whoever wanted to talk to Joe Nuxhall. And that's the thing that impressed me about Joe. Not many times do you see an individual that it doesn't matter if he's in the middle of a golf game or in the middle of a banquet or whatever he's doing, that he's going to take time for anyone that wants to talk to them. If it was going to his golf tournament for myself and playing in his golf tournament and seeing how he interacted with people that were supporting his cause, or if Joe came to our golf tournament and supported what the Anthony Munoz Foundation is doing, it was always a pleasure to see Joe Nuxhall. And I got to share a story with you. I met a gentleman when I was 6 years old. I would eventually play 3 years for him in high school. He was my high school baseball coach. And George mentioned Rod Dedeaux. Well, this gentleman pitched on the 61 USC National Championship team. And I started at third base for him for 3 years in high school. 3 years ago, I named an award after Jim Seaman that my foundation gives out to someone in this community that impacts the youth. So every year we fly Jim and his wife out for our event. And it just happens that our dinner is Sunday night, our golf is Monday. It happens that the last 2 years, Saturday night, the Reds are in town. And we take the guys that come in early to the Reds game. Well, I had a chance. Jim's wife, Cheryl, went with my wife to dinner, and Jim and I went to the baseball game, and we were in a suite, and my high school baseball coach grew up in Iowa. like I said, played at USC. And we're sitting in there, and in walks Joe Nuxall. And my baseball coach, who's about 65 years, lit up and was like a 12-year-old kid. And Joe spent a good 15 to 20 minutes just one-on-one with Jim. And you would have thought that they knew each other going way back. That's how special Joe Nuxall made people feel. And every time I see Jim, he talks about that experience. And when I informed him that Joe had passed away, it was like Jim had lost one of his close friends just after that 15-minute encounter. Kim, Nuxall family, thank you for allowing me to be here tonight, to be part of this. I mean, I'm a young man that grew up in Southern California, dreaming to be a pro baseball player like all these other guys. And to be here tonight at this great tribute to a great man, I am thrilled. I'll be 50 years old this summer, and I feel like I'm 12, 13 years old in this room with all these great baseball players, great baseball announcers. Jim Breach, a former teammate of mine, knows how much I love baseball. I can't quote all the stats like Jim can. He can give you games in the 60s and 70s by inning, score, who's, the starting lineups, but I try to do that. As I wrap it up, I just want to share something. And here's the impact not only Joe has on certain individuals, but when I was sitting back here early in the evening, I got a phone call and I saw it was my son Michael. And I text messaged him back, which surprises my kids that I can text message. He said, I said, my message was, I am at a Joe Nuxall tribute. And here's what Michael wrote. Dad, call me when you're rounding third and heading home. Thank you, and God bless each and every one of you.
Folks, I've got Anthony Munoz, longtime friend of Joe Nuxall, here with me. Anthony, we're happy to see you here at the Hope Project. Can you share with our viewers a little more information of the friendship that you and Joe shared?
Oh, no question. When you're involved in athletics, and athletics are a passion, you gravitate to not only the sport, but then you gravitate to people that are around those sports. And being a big baseball fan, when I came to Cincinnati, I started going to some Cincinnati Reds baseball games. And of course, you go to Reds baseball games not only when you're listening to the game on radio, but when you're around the locker room, if you get a chance to go in there, you see Joe Nuxall. And that's kind of how I first met him, was going to some of the Reds baseball games. And then the longer I was a resident here in Cincinnati, which has now been 28 years, you see him at different events. And one experience, the year after I retired in '93, Jim Breach and I went down to Baseball Heaven, and we participated in that week-long down in Plant City playing baseball. Of course, Joe was down there. And then again, just a lot of the events that go on around this city. There are so many charitable events here, and Joe was such a giving person. If it was playing in my golf tournament, if it was going to his golf tournament, playing in his golf tournament, or anybody else that needed some help, Joe was there. And that's how the relationship continued. And you look at a guy that's from here, that played his career here, and then everybody knows. I mean, he was here his whole life, and just to see how much he is loved and everything he gave to this great community, it's just an honor to be here tonight.
I think the incredible thing is Joe absolutely 100% sports, but just the friendship, the sports aside, the friendship that he shared with everybody. I mean, we'd see him down at Kroger's in his little pink slippers at 6 o'clock in the morning.
Exactly.
He didn't care. He was Joe.
Well, and a couple key words in there: friendship and everybody. I don't think there's a person in this community or wherever Joe went that Joe came in contact with that didn't believe that they were close friends with Joe, because that's how he made you feel.
Yeah, well, and he did, and he remembered everybody's name.
Oh, that's amazing.
You could meet him once or twice, and he would turn around and call people by name.
Yeah, and
I don't even remember your name. No, I'm teasing.
When I was playing, it was hard enough for me to remember the plays, let alone the millions of people you meet. But and that's what was so special about Joe, is that he would. I mean, he'd come up to you, "Hey, Anthony, how you doing?" And it's like you were the only one there at the time, even though you might might be surrounded by a lot of people.
It could have been 6 months or a year since you saw him.
Right.
And he'd be right there like not a day had passed.
Exactly.
And but we're here tonight to celebrate Joe's legacy, the Hope Project. Hopefully we'll pull in enough money to see his dream come true, and we appreciate you coming here tonight to be a part of it.
It's an honor to be here, and thanks for having me.
All right.
Our next scheduled speaker tonight, if you look on our program, you'll see that the scheduled speaker was Dr. Tim Kremchek. If you've been paying close attention, about an hour and a half ago, Dr. Kremchek and his lovely wife Hillary skated out of here in a very fast fashion. And when you're a doctor, usually that means an emergency. And I just received the text message, and I do not know how to return this, Anthony, but I received this text message from Dr. Kremchek that says that evidently on the last pitch of today's game, when Johnny Cueto, before he was lifted from the game, sustained an injury, and the early prognosis at this point, unfortunately, is the fact that he sustained a torn ulnar collateral ligament. However, Dr. Kremchek is confident that with new and a radical experimental surgery that he is performing as we speak, he will not miss a start. I know it's not April Fool's, folks, but lighten up a little bit. Come on. You know, if you knew Joe Nuxhall, like a lot of us have had the pleasure over the years, boy, I could hear the wind going right out of this crowd. It's a joke. He will pitch next week. Turn the TV on. George will introduce him as a starting pitcher, I think, on Tuesday, right? If you've known Joe Nuxhall like we've all known Joe, you know he loves golf, and we played so many rounds of golf with him over the years. Tommy Hume told you that, and Marty, when he took golf back up 15 years ago, we would meet down at the hotel lobby every day at 6:30, and we'd be off to some golf course or another. And more likely than not, Joe would have set this golf up, and he knows a lot of heavyweight people all around the world, and one of those guys is here with us tonight. And to pay tribute to Joe in his own way and to thank him for being here, let's give him a round of applause. The president of the Tiger Woods Foundation, Mr. Greg McLaughlin.
Thank you very much. It's certainly a great honor to be with you tonight. I don't know about you guys. Anthony Munoz looks to me like he could suit it up for the Bengals right now. Didn't he look pretty good? How long ago did he retire? I've known the Nuxhall family since I think I calculated it was 1965, which is, that's a long time. I was one. No, actually I was a little older than that, but I had a 40-plus year relationship with Joe, and I really enjoyed the time that we spent, and Joe really had a very positive inspiration in my life. And there's one story I'd like to share with you because, there's so many things. I mean, we go on, everybody in this room could go on, and you all knew them, and there were many things that would happen in the neighborhood. Whether Joe was, when it snowed, I remember Joe would gas up this 18 horsepower lawnmower and go around and do everybody's driveway, and he got a lot of pleasure out of actually doing that, or the 5,000 basketball games we had actually in the yard. So, but it was interesting because in running Tigers Foundation, I was doing this media deal one time, and this guy, he asked me a question. He said, geez, he goes, you got this athlete, and he goes, you got this foundation that's worth $100 million, and it's the largest athletes foundation in the world, and you've serviced over 10 million kids, in 10 years. He said, can you put that in perspective for me? And I was like, I'm really sure how to answer that question. I thought about a story that Joe told me. He told me about an analogy one time, and I said to him, and I drew upon this Joe Nuxhall story, and I said, do you know the difference between a fairy tale and a Texas tale? The guy says, no. And I said, well, a fairy tale begins once upon a time, and a Texas tale begins, you sons of bitches aren't going to believe this. he got me out of the thing, and, you know, I told him years later, and we, you know, laughed about it, and he had a million stories like that. But, you know, in all seriousness, I think it's great to reminisce about Joe, but, you know, I think tonight, you know, is really more about, you know, inspiration and hope. And I think it's incumbent on all of us in this room to help Kim carry this legacy of this Hope Project forward. And I know it's what Joe would have wanted, and I think you all know it's what Joe would have wanted. You know, in the fundraising business and in the foundation business, I tell people there's 3 W's that you look for in people. The first one, my personal favorite, is wealth. Writing a check, contributing. All of you tonight that contributed, that's great. Checks are key. Checks are important. We're happy to contribute as well. The second thing is wisdom. You all can provide direction, help, support, input. And the last one really is work. I mean, I'm sure that Kim would welcome your help. And remember the 3 W's, because I think it's important to keep the legacy alive, and I think that you all can help doing that. In closing, I have a proclamation here that I'd like to give, and I'd like to present, and I'll read it to you. It's pretty brief. It says, in honor of Joe Nuxall, whereas Joe Nuxall has dedicated time and valuable resources to the youth of the Butler County community, whereas through projects like the Joe Nuxall Scholarship Fund, Children's Center, and Character Education Fund, Joe's commitment to the youth of our society has been a wonderful representation of how one person can make a difference. Resolved by Tiger Woods, founder of the Tiger Woods Foundation, that Joe Nuxall is commended for his dedication and commitment to help develop strong persons of character and leaders in our community. Dated 3rd day, April 2008, signed Tiger Woods. Thank you all.
Before we wrap up, there's two brief pieces of business. If you look in the back, this guy, he never wants to be recognized. He came in a little bit late, but we want you to recognize him. There's nobody in this room who loved Nuxie more than this man, or who spent more time with Nuxie than this man. Bernie Stowe. Bernie, you out there? Come on, stick your head in here, Bern. Barnyard. Where is he? Where'd he go? Right there. Bernie! There he is. A standing ovation. And there's one other man who'd like to say a couple of words. One of the greatest hitters ever to wear a Cincinnati uniform. Yep, he hit home runs, but he hits home runs every day when he deals with young kids. Let's welcome George Foster.
I thought it was very important to let everybody know that Joe Nuxall did have Afro-American friends. But Joe Nuxall, you know, he had a locker right next to me, and he's always our batting practice pitcher. And he was a guy that proved to me that I could hit the ball in the red seats. He threw great batting practice. He's a guy that you love to throw batting practice because he didn't have an ego that he wanted to be able to try to get you out. But he was there to, give you good batting practice. But certain things that the word epitomize Johnny Bench taught me earlier today. In life is, I don't know if you ever seen the movie Happy Feet. You know that most of the penguins, they could sing and one only could dance. And Joe wanted to say that don't be so concerned about how different you are in life compared to what positive difference you can make in life. And just listen to Joe. He was always positive, always had great things to say about people. Last but not least, you probably seen the movie Play It Forward. And Joe was always saying, try to do a good deed. And that's one thing that I would want to leave to you tonight is that try to do a good deed, whatever it is, helping somebody that has a flat tire or helping somebody down the stairs. But you find that once you start doing that, you know, somebody else is going to see that and become infectious. And to the Nuxall family, I'd like to say to you that Joe Nuxall will live forever through all of us because we had great experiences with Joe. And when you're around a person like Joe, you don't realize the importance this individual has, and he really enjoyed life. I know on the golf course he really enjoyed life, and it was always a cheerful smile you would see from Joe when he would meet you. And yes, he would know you by name, and he just feel good. Everybody becomes his friend. But I just want to take some time to let you know that Joe is going to be felt. I felt strong about Joe as far as being a friend, and want to get up here and let you know that Joe is great people. And as everybody had said earlier, if the Nuxall family needs any support, be there to help them out, because Joe is a legacy. He's leaving a legacy, and he's an icon in his community, and he will live forever. Thank you.
Good night, buddy.
Oh, you made it through just about 9 innings, George. Way to go.
To the Nuxall family, thank you for sharing Joe with us all these years. Thank you for the moments that we were all fortunate to spend with him. The love that we've all felt in this room tonight doesn't go away, does it?
It will never go away. There's a void now that'll extend throughout the rest of the season, next year, and years beyond. I don't think that we'll ever go into a ballpark, Joe or George, without thinking about Joe. And I'm glad to have been a part of tonight, because this is a very special night for a very special person.
It's been great for us. And one last accolade. This night started with Kim saying, "What's it all about?" It's all about all of you people here. It's all about the love that we all share, and it culminates as we bring Kim back to the podium for one final presentation. Kim?
Chris, George. Wow. Kind of reminds me of the funeral and visitation. And I remember telling Mom, I said, I knew it was going to be impactful, but I didn't think it was going to be like this. I knew this was going to be a special evening, but I didn't think it was going to be like this. I'm reminded of a really a treasured friend that I met, and I thank Dad because I met him, because it wasn't for him, none of that would have happened with Sean Casey and what we did in Fairfield a few years back, where we had author Jeffrey Marks and Sean and Joe Ehrman for just an unbelievable evening. But Jeffrey wrote that wonderful book, A Season of Life. I always remember his comment. He said, the world doesn't need any more go-getters. The world needs more go-givers. And wow, what a room full of go-givers we have tonight. And please do applaud yourself. Thank you. Last year, after our event, I got to thinking, I said, I really want to create a special award, something that kind of encapsulates Dad's career, what he was all about, how he treated people, and the impact he had on others. And I thought, why don't we create an award that is based on character, the Joe Nuxall Character Award. So then got the idea, and I thought, we'll make this happen. I thought, now, who can we give this very first Joe Nuxall Award of Character to? And when I look around this room, holy cow, there's many of you who could be up here receiving this award. And I thought of someone who paralleled Dad's life, came from humble beginnings, remained humble all of his life, never met a stranger. He loved people. He loved baseball. I received an email after after Dad's passing that kind of solidified this. And it was an email from a reporter in Texas. Never met him in my life. He made it a point to contact me, and I believe it was John Kieswetter's former roommate, if I'm not mistaken. And he wrote a story all about this gentleman that we're about to present this award to, and it just sounded like Dad's life. One thing that stood out, he said, this gentleman's father never let him fall in love with himself. And that's why he was the way he was. That's why my dad was the way he was. And I am so proud. I am so honored to present this award to a person who represents exactly what this award is all about. A person who was a leader, who impacted lives, not only in just Cincinnati, Detroit, wherever he went. He made a difference in people's lives and continues to. And unfortunately, he was not able to make it tonight, but I'm glad to have his catcher, who he called the greatest catcher he ever saw, accept this award in his honor, to Reds Hall of Fame manager Sparky Anderson.
I almost feel like I have to get in character for Sparky. I just got off the phone with him. Sparky was in the hospital for a couple of weeks. It's the second time in 4 years he's got a little problem at times with some tissue things. Anyway, he was down to 129 pounds. He's back up to 145 now. But I called and I said, you know, I'm representing. Oh, you could do it better than I can. I don't deserve, oh no, I don't deserve this. No. Joe Nuxhall. Now, Joe, that's a real man. Real man. I'll tell you one thing. You know what I remember about Joe? We were playing gin. Remember when we played gin? You, Joe, and I played gin every day. And Joe couldn't play. He was not a good player. He was not a good loser either. He was not a real good loser. And I got on the plane that day. Remember that day? I can tell you right now. You remember it too. Dealt me 10 cards. And it was gin. I laid it down. He threw his entire cup of coffee on me. Oh, no, I don't deserve this. There's only one Joe Nuxhall. Joe wasn't like a brother to me. He said, people say, I'll miss him. Well, I say they don't know him. I can't miss Joe Nuxhall because everybody loved Joe Nuxhall. You don't miss a person like Joe Nuxhall. He's in your heart every day. He was in that locker room every day. He was what made all of our lives tick. He was what made all of our lives work. He was the personification of a professional and a man. He was a great human being. And Sparky said, I made some of that up. Because Sparky couldn't say that. I remember when Sparky was on this book tour and he had for his third book, and I got up and I said, now Sparky has written more books than he's read. So Sparky was brilliant. He was your friend, he was your mentor, he was your manager, someone you respected. And that's the same thing we're talking about, the qualities. When Kim started talking about the qualities of a man and who should deserve this award first, it was a man who walked in the same paths and walked in similar belongings and beginnings, as Kim said. To me, Sparky Anderson was everything we could be, everything we could want in a friend and a manager, a mentor, and all the things that it was. And that's the way Joe was. So when you're talking about an award that has Joe Nuxhall's name on it, and especially the first one ever, for all of us, we take great pride in the fact that Sparky Anderson gets this award because of the nature of what this award is and what it means. And to Sparky, that meant everything: character, heart. And that's the way Sparky was. He believed in people. He could read people. He trusted in people. And the one man that he always to this day, loved and respected was Joe Nuxhall. So on behalf of Sparky Anderson, it is a pleasure and a great honor for me to accept this on his behalf from the whole Nuxhall family and from the Hope Project and their foundation. Thank you.
You know, it's been a long evening, and I just sum it up as I have the last few weeks. You know, Dad, he loved what he did. He loved the people of Hamilton and Fairfield and Butler County and Cincinnati. He loved the Reds organization. He loved the Reds fans. And I guess from all that's happened from November 15th, that's just blatantly obvious. And that you loved him back. And from me, myself, and the foundation, all the people that put this together, Cindy and everyone, and the people that came this evening, my family, we just cannot thank you enough for caring enough to be here and making a difference and making an impact on kids in this area. We will continue to do so. And thanks for helping me carry the torch tonight. Thank you. Thank you.